This is the third part of the righteous judge teaching. In part 1, I talked about Gnosticism, that we cannot attain salvation through any amount of knowledge or spiritual wisdom. In part 2, I talked about the folly of legalism, that we cannot attain salvation by any amount of good works. Today, I'd like to talk about the ignorance excuse. You know what I'm talking about. You got pulled over for speeding, and you tell the officer, "Oh, I didn't see that speed limit sign back there. I'm sorry, officer." And the officer is understanding and just gives you a warning. Except he's pulled you over before speeding in the same zone a week ago. Ignorance is bliss, right? Not on Judgment Day. You might fool that policeman, but you can't fool God. This is the third main lane on the wide highway to hell, where there are no stop signs and speed limit, but it all comes to a dead end. You might be familiar with the song Highway to Hell, written by the Australian rock band AC/DC in 1979. In a little over 6 months, the lead singer Bon Scott was found dead in the back of a car due to alcohol poisoning. Some say he choked on his own vomit after drinking too much. Living easy, living free, not a care in the world, and suddenly the party is over. Most people don't see the end of the road until it's too late. Are you going down that same road? You can't just ignore the truth and think you can play stupid later. That will not save you on Judgment Day. Someone might argue, would God send someone to hell if he never heard the truth? For one, this is a loaded question based on some assumptions. The first assumption is that it is unfair to punish someone who didn't know what they were doing was wrong. If someone breaks the law, he or she is still liable, even if they had no knowledge of the law being broken. If that were not so, then someone could just pretend like they didn't know. This legal principle is called ignorantia legis nemanim excusat. Ignorance of law excuses no one. This same principle applies to the heavenly. Imagine a man standing before a judge and in his defense says, "But, Your Honor, I didn't know that it was against the law." This kind of man we will call the ignorant. I know, got super creative with this one. What would the righteous judge reply? He would say something like, "There were signs all around you. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. If you sought the truth, then you would have found it, and the truth would set you free. But you deafened your ears and chose not to listen. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." Romans 1:20. There is no lack of evidence about the existence of God, and that the God of the Bible, Yehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is the one true God. In a universe of law and order, the burden of proof is on the skeptic claiming that such a world could exist by random chance. Most of the time, it is not sincere ignorance, but willful ignorance, because they do not want to be held accountable to this higher power. It is not the evidence that is the issue, but the interpretation of the evidence. I'll give you a simple example. Two geologists are wondering why there are all kinds of fish and shell fossils found on Mount Everest, the highest mountain on Earth. One geologist concludes that the mountain must have shifted from the bottom of the ocean over millions of years out of the water to a towering 8,849 meters, or 29,032 feet. However, for organisms to be fossilized, they must be covered quickly under pressure. Otherwise, it would naturally decay. Okay? So, what was that event? It only leads to more questions, as Mount Everest isn't a volcano and never was. So, how did fossilized fish and shells show up near the surface of this mountain? The second geologist sees this as clear evidence for the flood of Noah. Is it a lack of evidence that is the issue? No. But the interpretation of the evidence based on the worldview that the geologists have. Lack of evidence isn't the issue why most reject the truth. It is the heart of man that is the issue. It is our nature to ignore and dismiss anything that challenges our worldview, especially ideas that we were taught as true since childhood. It is much more comfortable to come up with some other explanation, building an entire empire on the foundation of lies, than to face the reality of being accountable to a higher power. The second assumption in the question, would God send someone to hell if he never heard the truth, is that we assume that this someone even wanted the truth. Most people won't find the truth because they don't want to know the truth and would much rather believe a lie. For this is a rebellious people, lying sons who refuse to listen to the law and instruction of the Lord, who say to the seers, "You must not see visions from God," and to the prophets, "You must not prophesy to us what is right. Speak to us pleasant things and smooth words. Prophesy deceitful illusions that we will enjoy. Get out of the true way. Turn aside from the path of God. Stop bothering us with the Holy One of Israel." Isaiah 30:9-11. But you will find the truth if you are diligently seeking for it. For Jesus said, "Ask and keep on asking, and it will be given to you. Seek and keep on seeking, and you will find. Knock and keep on knocking, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who keeps on asking receives, and he who keeps on seeking finds, and to him who keeps on knocking it will be open." Matthew 7:7-8. You will find, not maybe, you will find. A scoffer seeks wisdom and finds none, for his ears are closed to wisdom. But knowledge is easy for one who understands, because he is willing to learn. Proverbs 14:6. Jesus also said, "Whoever has a teachable heart, to him more understanding will be given, and whoever does not have a yearning for truth, even what he has will be taken away from him." Mark 4:25. And God isn't difficult to find. He didn't go anywhere. We have strayed ever since Adam's sin, and he is waiting patiently for us to return as a loving father. While the prodigal son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with compassion for him and ran and embraced him and kissed him. Luke 15:20. The third assumption in the question, would God send someone to hell if he never heard the truth, is that God is a big meanie for sending people to hell. No. People send themselves to hell because of their wickedness and unbelief. There are no innocent people in hell. For all have sinned without the law, will also perish without regard to the law. And all who have sinned under the law will be judged and condemned by the law. Romans 2:12. The only group of people this question would even apply to is little children. And the answer is no. You won't find little children in hell because little children are innocent. By the way, that is one of the reasons I believe Satan must be loosed again after the 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth, to test those who didn't have the chance to either accept or reject the gospel. And when the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison, the abyss, and will come out to deceive and mislead the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, including Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the war. Their number is like the sand of the seashore. Revelation 28:9. Why in the world would God release Satan again? Because God gives everyone a choice. By the way, this final battle won't last very long. Fire comes down from heaven and consumes them all in the moment. What choice will you make? I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you today that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore, choose life, in order that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving the Lord your God, by obeying his voice, and by holding closely to him, for he is your life, your good life, your abundant life, your fulfillment, and the length of your days. Deuteronomy 30:19 and 20. And if you are already a believer, I challenge you with the words of the Apostle Paul. How will people call on him, in whom they have not believed? And how will they believe in him, of whom they have not heard? And how will they hear, without a preacher, messenger? And how will they preach, unless they are commissioned and sent for that purpose? Just as it is written, and forever remains written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. But they did not all pay attention to the good news of salvation. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So faith comes from hearing what is told, and what is heard comes from the preaching of the message concerning Christ. But I say, did they not hear? Indeed, they have. Their voice, that of creation, bearing God's message, has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the farthest ends of the world. Romans 10:14-18. Another argument I've heard over the years is, well, if God wanted us to believe in him, then why doesn't he just show up and reveal himself to the world? He has. Multiple times. Haven't you read in Exodus, when Moses was receiving the Ten Commandments, that Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire? Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. Exodus 19:18. And All the people witnessed the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the smoking mountain. And as they looked, the people were afraid, and they trembled and moved backward and stood at a safe distance. Then they said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, or we will die." Exodus 20:18 through 19. Why do you suppose that there was thick darkness around the Lord? For the Apostle John wrote, "God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all." 1 John 1:5. Contradiction? Not at all, because the darkness was acting as a shield. Otherwise, without the thick darkness, the whole earth would have melted in his presence. But despite this great display of his majesty, what do we read that happened as Moses was receiving the 10 Commandments? Now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, they gathered together before Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron replied to them, "Take off the gold rings that are in the ears of your wives, your sons and daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from their hands and fashioned it with an engraving tool and made it into a molten calf. And they said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." Exodus 32, 1-4. So they made an idol right before the presence of the blazing, smoking mountain. God was right before them, and yet they still didn't believe. Jesus, through his life, showed who God was to the people. And even after witnessing the miracles, some people had the audacity to demand for a sign. But he replied and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation that is morally unfaithful to God craves and demands a miraculous sign. But no sign will be given to it, except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Matthew 12:39-40. Philip, one of Jesus' apostles, said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and then we will be satisfied." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you for so long a time that you do not know me yet, Philip, nor recognize clearly who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not say on my own initiative or authority, but the Father, abiding continually in me, does his works, his attesting miracles and acts of power. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Otherwise, believe me because of the very works themselves, which you have witnessed." John 14:8-11. For in him all the fullness of deity, the Godhead, dwells in bodily form, completely expressing the divine essence of God. Colossians 2:9. And yet, what did the Jews do? Handed over the King of Kings to the Romans to be executed on a stake like a criminal. And what do we read in Revelation chapter 14? Then I looked, and this is what I saw. The Lamb stood firmly established on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. Revelation 14:1. Who is the Lamb? Jesus. And what is he doing? Standing. Not floating above or in some other dimension or like that. Standing means his feet has touched the ground. He has returned. Picking up in verse 6, then I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven with an eternal gospel to preach to the inhabitants of the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. And he said with a loud voice, Fear God with awe and reverence, and give him glory and honor and praise and worship, because the hour of his judgment has come. With all your heart worship him who created the heaven and the earth, the sea and the springs of water. Revelation 14:6 and 7. Because the hour of his judgment has come, not will come, but right now. Jesus has returned, and this is the final altar call. And you know what will happen? People will still refuse to believe. Jesus spoke this parable. Now, there was a certain rich man who habitually dressed in expensive purple and fine linen, and celebrated and lived joyously in splendor every day. And a poor man named Lazarus was laid at his gate, covered with sores. He eagerly longed to eat the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Besides, even the dogs were coming and licking his sores. Now it happened that the poor man died, and his spirit was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom, paradise. And the rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, the realm of the dead, being in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away, and Lazarus in his bosom, paradise. And he cried out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus so that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in severe agony in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you've received your good things, all the comforts and delights, and Lazarus likewise bad things, all the discomforts and distresses. But now he is comforted here in paradise, while you are in severe agony. And besides all this, between us and you, people, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who want to come over from here to you will not be able, and none may cross over from there to us. So the rich man said, Then, Father Abraham, I beg you to send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, in order that he may solemnly warn them and witness to them, so that they too will not come to this place of torment. But Abraham said, They have the scriptures given by Moses, and the writings of the prophets. Let them listen to them. He replied, No, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent. They will change their old way of thinking and seek God in his righteousness. And he said to him, If they do not listen to the messages of Moses and the prophets, then They will not be persuaded even if someone rises from the dead. Luke 16:19 through 31. Funny and sad that even after Jesus arose from the dead, most people still do not believe. What about you? Will you be like the rich man who lived his life thinking ignorance is bliss? Are you just going to follow the crowd, go with the flow, or take the road less traveled on? I pray that you carefully consider these things. If Christianity isn't true, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then it is of no importance. For if the dead are not raised at all, let us eat and drink and join ourselves now, for tomorrow we die. 1 Corinthians 15:32. But if Jesus did rise from the dead, then Christianity is true, and everything that Jesus spoke is validated. And that changes everything. Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. Next up, I will be discussing the sinner's prayer and how this popular doctrine nowadays has reduced Christianity to a ritual that'll only take 5 minutes of your time. This shallow lip service Christianity is sending a lot of people to hell.